there was more content created by AI so far this year than
humans. Yes.
You know,
that's a terrifying reality. The idea that we're giving these companies these massive tax breaks, and people will argue that, oh, well, other states are doing it and we have to be competitive. We don't. We don't. I'm okay with not being competitive with Tennessee, or I forget, there's several other states who are doing this. But we don't. I promise you, it's okay. We're going to be just fine. They're going to destroy all of our farmland. In fact, there's a data center. I want to talk about the data centers. We'll bring this up. So there's a data center very close to where I live, smack dab in the middle of beautiful farmland. I actually know the family that sold them the land, and it makes me angry a little bit. But the guy that owned it died, and it went to his kids, and then they decided to sell it. And that's very unfortunate. He was a dude, like he was an absolute dude. I'm not sure he would approve. Right. But I did want to bring up the data centers too. Obviously, Jimmy and Whitney talked about this a lot, but I wanted to bring this up because there's a lot of pushback. So a constitutional amendment to ban new data centers in Ohio is allowed to move forward. This is a really great step forward. So I wanted to let Ohioans know about this, but talk a little bit about some of the data center stuff before we move on to Erebor.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it's you know, you can kind of learn quite a bit about power structures when you kind of look at how this spook nexus operates. And you know, it's not an accident that Wexner is just driving around in his Land Rover or whatever, and he's driving around and seeing farmland in the early 80s in the New Albany area, and he's like, all right, this is the place. And they picked this pretty small town, and it didn't have a big population. It was like a few thousand, 3,000 or 4,000, in the early 90s. Now it's upward. I think it's 11 to 14,000, somewhere in that range. It's obviously gotten quite a bit bigger, but you can learn from how they the decisions that they make about how they can use local politics as a way to springboard towards much bigger world defining, potentially country defining projects and companies. And so, Wexner and his crew coming in, they buy up all this land, and they realized that Ohio was actually really positioned in a really good way due to sort of really old world infrastructure barons putting up the Union Pacific, railroad lines that ran through that parallel. And it was, because of there are already these big lines that are drawn, broadband companies and fiber companies had a really easy track to just lay fiber optic cable, which is obviously sort of the lymphatic node system, basically, of these data centers, is you have this connection to the internet and a strong one. And so there was already this infrastructure built via the railroads to have this easy place to run these fiber optic lines. And obviously its proximity, but not too close to Washington, D.C., allowed them to kind of have this really nice where, okay, we can get data from D.C. really quickly. But also, if there ever was an explosion or something bad happened in the nation's capital, we have basically this backup center in Ohio that's far enough away from a nuclear attack or something like that, and we would be able to have our comms up and running, in minutes. Basically just turn on the backup servers that are in this area. So it was kind of this combination of this old infrastructure of the railroads being there and its proximity, but not too close to DC, that made this the perfect area to build these data centers. And so Wexner and crew went around and they just bought up tons of land. And yeah, he was doing the limited and was doing social engineering of, children and other things using, his retail markets and all that, and Victoria's Secret and all that stuff is absolutely true. But, he's really made a ton of money in the last decade or so selling off this land to all of these huge big tech companies that are coming in or leasing the land. And so, you can learn a lot, right? So the Ohioans that want to push back on this, I think that they can learn a lot of like, well, they came in and went, wow, we can take over the land, buy up the land, and then just start doing a whole bunch of illegal lobbying at the state Senate level, and basically pass any legislation that we want to encourage more and more of these people coming in, getting them more and more tax breaks, paying our buddies. And so they were able to basically gamify the Ohio Senate to be another proxy of the Wexner octopus. And that, we could kind of invert that and go, okay, well, hey, if they're able to build up this entire infrastructure for like the brain of the AI future, the drone warfare production of the future by just gamifying local politics, well, obviously there's a lot of power and importance in local politics. And I have basically no faith in federal level politics at all, but there is an importance, I think, of being involved in your community. And these things are going to have real effects on Ohioans. And it's like, well, hey, Wexner just took over the whole thing over 50 years. Let's point all this out. Let's map out all of the people that are connected to him. The framing of this piece has a lot to do with Vivek Ramaswamy's campaign to be the governor, and how he's completely connected in with this nexus. His company he founded a few years ago, the Strive Asset Management, this anti-woke management company, was seeded by Lutnick and Lonsdale and Teal. And here he is basically being the guy that will determine, who's in charge of the tax committee, where are these tax breaks going? He's going to be that guy. So when he left Doge sort of, rather quickly after Trump was elected the second time, people kind of joked that it was this demotion, like, oh yeah, okay, go off to Ohio, Vivek, like, nice try. You ran for president, didn't work. You got booted out of this, organization. A couple weeks into the, no, actually it's a promotion of senses that, when you're
it's strategic,
looking at this power. Exactly. When you're looking at this nexus as if organized crime, this is a capo being made, a made man who did all the right things on the campaign. And now he comes in and very likely, who knows, but very likely, presumably will, do very well. Although polling is all over the place, but my lack of faith in elections, I think he has a good chance of winning. But there's a lot of ground to be gained and learned from, unfortunately, of how this organized crime nexus works by taking over local government. Well, if you can take it back, then there's a lot of ways that you can push back on these data centers, on these drone manufacturers, and even some fintech stuff that's brewing in Ohio as well. So, but yeah, the data center thing is very, very important. I mean, where we're going, I mean, you can just see it, right? I mean, I think there was something that came out this week that there was more content created by AI so far this year than
humans. Yes. That's a terrifying reality.
Yeah. Yes,
that is terrifying.
Very bad. Very, very bad. And I am very sympathetic to people that use AI in their creative work. Like I get it. I know why you think it's efficiency gains and why I have to be sympathetic that everyone's just doing their best. But I think it's a really dangerous thing that we're basically replacing kind of the, the point of being human, arguably is to create, whether it's more life or just create art or content or whatever.
Even just that's thoughts, the whole point of even just here. Thoughts.
Yeah.
Aren't even, they're 100%. They're letting AI do their thinking for them now. Like, that is a crazy reality that we're living in. And I don't even know how to like wrap my head around the implications of that. It's scary. It's very scary.
I think unfortunately the implications are that if you don't use it, you lose it. And if everyone is going to be basically offshoring their mental capacities to these silicon server overlords, we'll lose them. We'll lose the ability to do these things. So it's very disturbing to me that like writing and art and music, it's like all being done with AI now. And it's like, that's being human. That's the point. But there also are a lot of non-creative implications for, these huge data centers. As we know, we're kind of in this algorithmic, control system and these who controls these algorithms. Yes, there's humans behind them, but more and more often it's getting towards being these silicon servers, these overlords that are autonomous. And so the more and more we kind of give up our autonomy to these folks, the harder it will be to get back. And it's going to have
and the more
implications
dependent
on
we
the
become.
education system. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, we won't get that back. Or it'll be really hard once we cede that territory, much like Ohio has to deal with. You have to go get your territory back. Well, you've ceded, unfortunately, not you, obviously, and I'm not blaming anyone, because
I mean, I am an Ohioan, so it is partially on me. Yeah.
Sure. But, if you cede the territory, it makes it that much harder to get it back. And we're ceding some very important territories as it relates to like the human experience and the economic experience and the social experience and the content distribution experience and the internet as a whole. So many of the ways that we interact with one another, the data centers are going to have huge impacts on that. So there's obviously the local level, but there's this meta level, this spiritual, whatever you want to call it. But there's a lot of levels that these data centers really affect us.
Well, again, there is a significant amount of pushback in Ohio, which does make me very happy to see. The senators have been introducing bills to limit them. There's a ton of activism around this, as this article points out here. Let me see if I can find the part where it talks about it. They got like 1,800 signatures or something like within a week. So there is a significant amount of pushback in terms of local activism and local groups and all of that stuff, which is really heartening to see. Hopefully that continues. I have already reached out to a couple of different people. I've already signed some stuff. I don't know how good that does, but like signing shit is so easy. You just, what I mean? Like it's one of the very most simple things that you can do. But it's not just like there are like 200, I think, data centers, more than 200 in Ohio, most of them in Central Ohio. I am in Central Ohio. I am surrounded by them. They're getting a ton of money in tax breaks. And as we were talking about earlier with the job creation, they sell it to us like, oh, you're going to get jobs. We gave $4.5 million to a data center project, and it's only going to give us 10 jobs. So that's what and as I tweeted out, 10 whole jobs to ruin our communities and water supplies. Awesome. Like it's great. Good stuff.
And not to interrupt, but the downstream effects of having a data center, well, it's going to run a bunch of bots and autonomous things. And it's actually possible that there may be a net job loss, not just those 10 jobs. Like it could cause, 500 people to lose their jobs doing something else. And that's a huge issue with the sort of deflationary effects of the AI boom. Where are these jobs gonna come from? How are we going to replace them? So the data centers themselves, which are like job replacement machines, don't hire anybody, so it's contradictory. Double negative.
Yes, it is contradictory. And I did just really quickly before we move on to Erebor, I did just want to bring this up because I feel like it went terribly underreported in Ohio. This was 4 weeks ago. Ohio EPA is weighing allowing data centers to dump wastewaters into rivers. What could possibly go wrong? It's fine, guys. Everything is fine. This is a terrible idea, but this is genuinely being batted around. The EPA is legitimately considering this, allowing them. Obviously, they claim it's going to be, regulated, and they're going to blah, blah, yada 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 bullshit, right? So, I just wanted to make sure that in talking about this in Ohio, I genuinely feel like this went terribly underreported. I saw a couple different articles about it. This should have been a very loud thing in the state of Ohio. This shouldn't even be under consideration. Nobody should even be uttering those words out loud. So, I just wanted to make sure we talked about that very briefly.
We'll be in San Antonio, Albuquerque, Houston, Dallas, Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, Burbank, California. That's on May 7th. That's a Saturday. Then we'll be in Tulsa and Oklahoma City, Spokane, Tacoma. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for all those tickets. See you there.